And we're back. Welcome to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga, wellness, etc. world and what we've been coaching our clients through. I'm Bridget. I'm joined by my fellow coaches, Carol, Shannon, Terry, and we have lots of little juicy nuggets and tidbits to talk about because I actually remembered to write stuff down this week as I was dealing with clients, literally first time in months. Um, and I wanted to start with something that came up yesterday with a client. She's and that I know that we've all here as coaches dealt with before is just she's dealing with a bit of schedule creep. We've got just a few too many classes on the schedule. Payroll's looking a little tight. Uh, and just kind of like added a few classes that, came out of nowhere sort of thing. So she's got lots of class types, a little bit too much payroll, and frankly, just too many classes on the schedule. And as we're sitting there, and we kind of started dealing with this at just the end of the call, so we haven't had time to come back to it. So I thought this would be a perfect time to chat with my fellow coaches here is like, where do you even start when you want to kind of cull a little bit of the schedule? There's so much that comes into every time we look at one class. It's like, oh, but Jenny always comes to this class. And if we get rid of this one, and Jenny will quit. Another big thing that comes up too is like, oh, this teacher, I'd have to get rid of. Oh, amazing, Terry. I'd have to get rid of like this teacher, blah, 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 blah. Terry just popped in the chat and reminded us that she did a whole workshop on this topic. So that would be an amazing place to dig in and dive in. But here on the roundup today, I'd love to pass it to our newest coach, Shannon, because Shannon said that she maybe has some recent experience from her very own studio that she might be able to shed some light on this topic for us. Shannon, take it away.
I'm sure everything I'm going to say is in Terry's workshop because I know, because Terry's my coach. So I know that we're going to be in alignment on this one. Where do you start? Start with the KPI, start with the numbers, go in and be honest with what classes are people actually going to. And I'm sorry, Jenny, if there's only five of people, including you in this class, we can't afford to have this class anymore. We've had this issue ongoing, just because of the nature of the programming that we offer. We've got our HIT style, and then we've got our yoga, which is like this beloved old school yoga that people, it's a cult, and they will rearrange their whole life to go to that class. And then we've got our more popular sort of like HIT and sculpt type modalities. And, it's like the numbers don't lie. Like people vote with their feet, they show up for the class that they want to take. And sometimes you just have to be just really discerning about it and look at the numbers and be honest with yourself. Is it worth it to have a class that you're going to lose money on so that Jenny is happy? I mean, no, it's not. And sometimes you have to have those conversations with the members as well. And I've had a lot of conversations recently with some of my hardcore yoga people where it's been like, we don't have the teachers to teach it. It's not popular right now. We still have this one. Please come to this one. You know, um, yeah, that's been my experience very recently.
I
Terry.
think, oh,
Oh,
No, go
sorry.
ahead, Carol. Go.
no, go ahead. Oh, well, I was just going to say, what numbers to look at, because that might be confusing to some people. Is
Yeah.
one of the things you need to know is what is your break even? Like, what do you have to make? How many people per class does it cost you? Or how many? Sorry, I'm a little bit loopy today. So help me out, people. Um, how much does it cost you to run one class? And then how much do you get from each person coming in the door? So then now you know, like, how many people do I need to just make the class run? And then beyond that, what makes it profitable? So Figuring out that first is, I think, a piece of this. I will say, in some circumstances, let's say you have early morning classes and you want to really fill that space for some people, they might not be making you money. They might be on that cusp, right? But you want to serve those people, and then you're making it up in some of the other classes, is the idea. So there are times, I'd say, where you might decide, you know what, this is a really loyal bunch of people, and it is a bunch enough. It's enough to keep it on. Um, but otherwise, you got to look at, again, like Shannon said, just be honest and look at the numbers, because oftentimes as business owners, we feel like there's something, I feel like that teacher is really good, and I feel like I want to have that teacher around, and I feel like the students really like this class, but the numbers will tell you the truth of the situation. And as hard as it is sometimes to cut something because of a teacher or a student and their needs and wants and desires, that doesn't always align with the studio's needs. So go ahead, Terry.
100%. So a couple of thinking, well, how do I get some of these numbers? And depending on the software you have, some is easier than others, but there are very simple ways. This is, again, pro tip. Here's a tip for you, because Coach Bridget loves the pro tips. Is to Coach Carol, what Carol said is, what is your break-even point? What is your cost per class? What is your average revenue per visit? So if you know those, you can get a general idea of what that is. And we're not talking about that you have to have like IRS worthy numbers to report, because it's not going to be plus or minus a huge amount. And the simplest way to get your cost per class is, what are the studio expenses that go in to put that class on? Your rent, your lease, utilities, payroll, marketing, basically almost all of your expenses go into making that class, unless you have specific expenses for like retreats and YTTs, you can pull those out. But if you just want to make it super simple, what are your total expenses? Then how many classes a year on average do you have? And you just divide that by expenses. That's your cost per class. And for simple math, let's just say it's $100. Then we want to know what your average revenue per visit is. And some softwares are better at giving this than others. But again, a simple calculation to do is, how many visits did you have last year? Divided by what is the revenue. Again, this is very, very simple. You can get way down in the weeds on this. But this is just a good, just simple revenue divided by the number of classes. And again, if you want to pull out things like a YTT or high ticket items like a retreat or something like that. So the revenue from your classes, right? What are the revenue from your classes? How many classes? How many people took class? Divide that by that. And that gives you your average revenue per visit. And again, doing simple math, let's say it's $10. That means you have to have a minimum of 10 people in the class just to break even. And then that's a benchmark I would share with your team. And that's nowadays 10 is, if you have a smaller studio, might be, but some of these bigger studios, I have studios that is 15. Right? So then it can kind of give some context to the teachers. If you have to cut a class, right? Then you're going to like, this is why. And again, to Carol's point, yes, if you have, like I had a class, my early AMs, they always hovered right around that break-even point, but they weren't losing me money. And again, those classes that have high, like are full, help balance it out. But if you're the point right now where you're not at that situation, then you're probably going to have to pare your schedule back. And that's just the reality of it. And I will also say another pro tip is, when do you add classes? Because that's when, I love how you said, Bridget, the schedule creep. Well, so-and-so wants to teach this style class, or I want to add this class, or we could have this class. Two things. First off, define what type of studio are you? Because you cannot be all things to all people. All right. And then yoga for everybody is a fallacy. Yes, everybody can do yoga, but not everybody might like the style classes you teach. Just don't get me wrong on that. It is for everybody, but in your studio, if you try to be yoga for everybody, you'll be yoga for nobody. And then, so who are you, Shannon? Who are you? Because
We know who I'm not.
you know who you're
that.
not. who are you? Who are you not? Is one. And then two, God, I lost my point. Senior moment. Who are you? Oh, and then you add classes. Typically, we like to say when you're like 70, 80% full, 70 to 80% of the time. That's when you add classes. And that's where you have a quantifiable metric for the schedule creep. If someone says, we'd love to add a class, great. What are you going to help? We got to build these classes up first. We're not adding any classes till we get here. And again, that is data. I really believe and encourage clients to share data with the teachers and the team so that they understand. They might not like it, but it can really help you in the long run if the team starts to understand why these numbers are important, how you're using them, and what they need to do to contribute. Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that on our monthly instructor meetings that I reiterate every single month, which is like, these classes, I don't mention any specifics, but I say we've got a range. This class is from 100% full to 30% full. Remember that your class needs to maintain a 50% attendance to stay on the schedule. If it's not maintaining 50%, we're going to have a conversation about what we can do to get 50% there. Because for me, it's not even the break even. I want the class to make money. Sorry.
No, 100% the class should make money. But in order to know how much money, it's like you need to know what the break-even point. You need to know where that metric is, right? And I love that. A couple of years ago, I had a client that one of their goals, their strategies for increased revenue, was they wanted to work towards having 70% of their classes 70% full all the time. And what was interesting, they achieved that. Even in their OG, I like to say OG 90-minute 5:30 a.m. Bikram yoga classes were, and this isn't a small, their capacity is like yours, it's like 40, 45. And I think partly they did that because everybody was aware of that goal. Everybody was working to achieve that goal, and everybody was cross promoting all the other modalities, right? To use one of our favorite expressions, all boats rise with the tide. Is everybody's working towards a common thing, then everybody's going to get better.
Did we do it? Do we solve the
I think we
schedule?
solved scheduling.
Okay. And plus,
Well,
visit
well,
Terry's workshop.
Wait. Carol has something to say. Let her
well,
say it.
sorry. Again, I'm a little
Oh, are
loopy
you saying we
today.
didn't solve that? Because
Well, I
Carol.
wanted to go back. I think we solved it all. I just wanted to go back and say, how does that happen? How does this creep happen?
Ooh, good
You
point,
know,
Carol.
and so and how can you avoid it is what I wanted to come back to. So my experience has been like, yeah, you can get really jazzed and excited about like adding something to your schedule before, like Terry's saying, like you want to have sort of a strategy for that and a timing when it makes sense, like the studio needs it. And I think a way that I always suggest doing something like that is like do pop-ups, like give a little taste. You don't have to immediately say, yep, we're putting 3 new classes on the schedule and this is what it is. And like, so I think that there's a nuance to it, you know, you want to try to, I don't know what the boots are, Terry. Okay. But yeah, so again, this is sort of like in my experience too, like a new owner trap is a little bit of like somebody comes to you and they want to do it, like, and you haven't really truly defined what your studio or your space is about. And so this is where we get like the 12 different class styles that like 3 of them are probably very similar, but they're called something different, you know? And so this is where you have to be very strategic and think through these things and be very specific about what you're adding and when. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, well, slow yen. Yeah. I had a client, I asked what they're like. I said, how much slower can yen get? And then the other one, by the way, other personal favorites is slow flow yoga. Slow flow. So I also did a workshop on turning your class descriptions into a sales tool. right? So how having an accurate class description with an accurate title. When I say accurate, something that's not buzzy, that makes no sense to anybody out there. Call the thing, right? Call the thing. And then if you want to have something jazzier, have it in the description. But yeah, also is looking at your class descriptions as well as the titles of your classes, because part of that goes to like search engines. Someone's looking for a yin yoga class, call it a yin yoga class, not call it something like sweet surrender. Anyway, just saying.
I also like to use the rule, like unless, you know, like we've talked about, 70% full, 70% of the time, et cetera, et cetera. Unless you're there, I like to use the rule about like I think of it as like the sweaters in my closet rule, where like if I'm gonna add another one, I need to take one away because I don't want extra payroll. I just want this, you know, if I have decided that this is an important thing to put on my schedule, then great. Is there something I can replace there? The other thing that I just want to remind people a couple things is one is that it actually does matter that your classes are like lively, that they have other people in them. And when you put, and I think people get trapped in like, I've got to have as many classes on the schedule as possible because I want to serve as many people. And like, I need something for the people who want to come straight for work, and I need something for the people who work later and all that kind of stuff. People will make it work for a great class, and part of a great class is usually like other people in that class. That's why people do group fitness, whether it's yoga or HIIT, is like they want other people to be in the class. It's just better energy. I think people teach better when there's more people in the room. It's just, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with it. Like I have a smaller studio, we have a lower volume studio, but we work really hard to keep our classes like lively and full. And a lot of times it's actually going to feel so much better taking that, making it, you know, two classes in the evening or even one class in the evening in certain cases. Like that can be great because then everybody funnels to that class. It's a super fun class. And so, yeah, so I think that's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, that has happened to us many times over the years where I was like, you know what, scratch that. We're making this one class. And or like on Friday for years, we actually only had one class on Friday, and I fucking loved it. It was so great. It was like a 9 a.m. Everybody came. It was sold out all the time. Now we have one that works really well in the afternoon, but for a while we just couldn't make anything work on Friday evenings. And so it was just really fun to just have one. Plus, last point is as a studio owner, I love taking classes off my schedule because even being 5,000 miles away, which is where I am from my studio, every single class on my schedule is psychic energy for me. It's like someone's at my studio in those hours, and I love being like, I know nobody's in the studio, nobody needs me, no emergencies can happen because there's no classes going on. So I'm all about a small schedule. I think it's amazing, and you can totally thrive with a smaller schedule.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's great tips, Bridget. And also another pro tip, if you're listening to this and you're newer or thinking of going in or opening, or even if you've been around a while and you're struggling, is well, I'll just say first pro tip is it's easier to add than to take away. So again, you said new studio, want to have every time slot available. No, intentionally, be very, very intentional about that. to Bridget's point, I talked about this in the workshop. It's like you may only have that mid-morning class, like whatever it's between 9 and 10, whatever it is, and then an evening class. Maybe you don't even start with an early AM class. Maybe on the weekends, you might just have like 2 classes on Saturday, one is whatever it is. And I love what Carol and her original partner did, is because it was just the 2 of them. Here's the other thing. It's okay to be closed one day. Carol and her former partner, they were the only ones teaching was Thursdays, right? You decided that Thursday.
Yeah, we decided based on what we had observed at the other studio we worked at. We're like, Thursdays are kind of slow. Let's take Thursdays off. We'll be there every other day of the week, teaching all the classes, etc. So, yeah, in the beginning we were closed, and everyone was cool with that.
Yeah, I always say I have a client in Ireland that Sunday is Sancresect. It's like, no, she's been open for 12 years. Totally could rock it on Sunday, but she's like, to your point, Bridget, it's that psychic energy. She's like, she knows that's her family day. Spends it with her kids and her spouse. That's their family day, and she doesn't have to worry about the studio being open. In fact, Shannon was on shadowing a call with one of my newer clients yesterday. Smaller studio, doesn't have a big schedule, and one of the teachers is not going to be able to teach by the end of this month. And Friday morning was problematic. We just said, close. She says, really? And I said, yeah. I said, right now, give yourself a day off. But right now, just close. It's summer anyway. And she was like, oh, okay. And it's okay to close. Right? Yeah.
I think it's just really super important too to bring back what Bridget was saying, like the energy that a smaller schedule can create where more people will be drawn to your classes. Like we've used this analogy before where it's like, do you want to go to the bar where there's only 2 other people in the entire place? I mean, Terry might want to go to that one because she'll have a party anywhere. But and that's not the energy that's great, right? But you also don't want to be at the bar where it's 5 deep. I can't even get to, it's going to take me 20 minutes to order, my next drink or whatever. Like, so there's a nice center of that where it's like there's people who are here, there's an energy, and your classes are the same way. You have to think about that. And just like she was saying too, like it's more fun to teach. Way easier, I
I
think.
always like to refer to it as comfortably full. Comfortably full, right? So yeah. So I think I think it's good. What else was on the list?
Go for it, the
You're on mic,
feedback.
Shannon.
Yeah. The other thing we were talking about before we went live here, I had another thing come up with a client this week that I feel like comes up plenty. So hopefully very on topic for someone out there is this studio owner is a newer studio owner, and she's also a newer teacher, which I think is part of sort of her trepidation or some of what's going on. And she is doing such an amazing job. She is so ahead of the curve on, a lot of people come to us after having owned a studio for a really long time, and honestly, like there's no rules, there's no standards, there's no nothing. And that's part of what we work on. And it can take years to undo sort of, it took you years to create these problems. It can sometimes take years to untangle them. But she's been doing such an amazing job of like going in, partly because she started coaching with us before she even opened. She's gone in and she knows these are the standards she wants to set. And so she's been giving feedback to teachers and stuff, and she had a teacher who she went in and she gave actually a glowing review to this teacher and then mentioned a couple things at the end that she was like, there was this little logistical thing, this little logistical thing, but they're really important to the studio and the vibe we want to create. And then the teacher stepped back from that class like shortly after. And who knows? This teacher actually has a lot going on. Who knows like what it really was, but it brought up for her this thing of like, am I doing feedback wrong? How do I uphold these standards and give feedback without pissing everyone off and without everybody quitting, you know? So I have tons of thoughts on it, but I'll let somebody else take it away. Start us off, Terry. I know you've got strong, I bet every one of us has strong feelings about this, but
I am actually going to defer to my colleagues, Carol and Shannon, on this because this is what, and freely full admission, this is something I really struggled with as an owner. I found I wasn't so great at it. I'd probably be better now. And I hired somebody to do it. So that's how I solved for it. I hired somebody who was much better at giving feedback than I was at the time. And because I was like one of those things, like, I just fucking don't want to do this. So I hired somebody who was really good at it. So that's how I solved it.
Terry,
So
can I ask,
yeah.
was the hard part like you just didn't even want to talk to them about it, or were you like too blunt? Were like
It was
what
like,
was it?
do it this way because I said so, and that's the
Right.
only fucking reason
Hashtag
you
Terry
need.
sad.
It's hashtag Terry Stat. So part of it was, it's just like my own, like how I was raised, how I just my own personality. It's just like, get over yourself.
Yeah, totally.
And unfortunately, that's not always the best thing with, particularly with yoga teachers. Because I realized I was really kind of, in terms of my personality, I think it just, I realized that I was an atypical yoga teacher. I was an atypical yoga teacher, right? So I love the business side of it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and if I were to do, I will say, I was going to defer. All I will say for me personally is that if I were to do it again, I would have a much better system because that was the other thing. I did not have a good system for giving the feedback. So I think, and I'm sure I see Carol and Shannon, they can talk more to that. But that is the thing that I was absolutely missing. I think if you have a system of feedback, then I do then feel it becomes better because you're taking the person out of it and addressing the, like you said, the performance class issues. And on that, I truly will pass the mic to my colleague.
I'm sort of probably in between where you were, Terry, and where Carol was, in that that's a main focus of my business right now is creating that feedback structure and a cadence, a regular cadence of giving feedback so that it's not out of nowhere. I think the problem is like it's kind of in the owner's head. Well, this person's doing that, and I don't like when they're doing that. And then when you finally have the discussion, they're like, "Wait, what?" It's like they just literally have no idea. So just having a way for us, it's going to be quarterly reviews of various metrics, and a monthly attendance at your class that we can give you some feedback afterwards, that you agree to having us give you feedback afterwards. Am I doing all the feedback? No, I only do the feedback on the classes that I know about. Like I'll only give OHY Bikram yoga feedback. Inferno, I have a lead teacher. They do that. So for every modality, there's somebody that gives the feedback.
Yeah, I
So
mean, to that point, I think it needs to be part of the culture of the business so that it doesn't come out of left field. Um, you know, I think it's great that the studio owner that Bridget's working with is doing this early, and yeah, and but we're not responsible for someone else's emotions or reactions to this type of thing. As long as you know that you're coming from a very clear and concise and like, this is an objective truth that I'm seeing. Like, this is something that we do in our classes to make it the outcome that we want. Like, if somebody has a problem with that, that it would be like, exactly, Terry, they're out, or whatever. Like, if you don't want feedback, then that's not what our culture is about. We're going to give feedback. And I think that there are obviously having some kind of feedback sandwich is always good. So you start with the good, you have the little pieces in between that like, this is what you can work on, and finish with something positive at the end. I know that one of the other things I've learned is in the feedback of the things you want them to work on, have them repeat back, like, what did you hear me say? And what do you find, what's the solution? Like, let's talk about how do we fix that or change it or make it better? Because sometimes they're not understanding, like they're hearing you, but they don't understand exactly what you're talking about. So it's a constant, I think, learning on both ends to give good feedback and get the outcome that you're looking for. Go ahead, Terry.
I think one thing that I was at an onsite with Josh last year, and one of the things we were working on was, develop that. They already had a culture of feedback, but was like, how do we optimize the class experience? What are we doing? And kind of going to that, 2.0 version of the feedback. And one of the things, and I think this is where, again, having tech tools is great. When you're doing these feedback, record it. Actually do a recording of the session, and then partly what you can do is you have a document of it and you can upload the raw recording. And if you have in your culture feedback and in your organization, you should have like a Google Drive that is HR, and in there's a folder for each staff member, and things like this can get uploaded. So not only having them repeat back, to Carol's point, is it's got to be recorded somewhere. So this is where this could be recorded. Then you can simply take that transcript or that recording, upload it to chat and say, give me, or some type of tech AI tool, what are the main things we talked about? Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, it's all organized. And then it's like, okay, now we have something. This is what we agreed to. Yep, boom. It's there. It's printed. You've got a copy of it. So that's another thing, is when you're designing your feedback process, it's like, what are all the before, during, and after steps, I guess. What's the SOP for, like you said, lead teacher? What do they do? Where do they start? Where do they go? So that's what I was saying. And for me, I was missing that, a lot of those pieces. But yeah, to Carol's point, repeat. It's what is it? The telephone, where if some person says it goes, remember you used to do that as a kid, go around the room. You can say blue and they hear green.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And yeah, how many times you're like, I don't remember that in the conversation. No, that's not what you said, right? So that's the other reason for record, and just say, look, we're going to record this so that we have a document, we can refer back to it, blah, 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 blah. And it's also a little bit CYA.
I think it also goes back to, I'm sorry, Bridget, were you?
No, go ahead.
It goes back to like some of your employee agreement and your tiered pay scales. So like this is all baked into the culture again. Like this is all understood. And also, Terry, you're reminding me, I feel like, didn't we talk about how there was a studio recently that they want the majority of their classes taught with operative commands? So they uploaded people's classes into AI to be like, what percentage of this person's class is not operative command? Where are the places where they're not using it? And let's fix that. So it was just, there are AI tools, and definitely, like you're saying, you need to process the before, during, and after. So there needs to be follow-up, right? You just want to give feedback and then leave it there. Like, we want to see that there's progress. And especially with newer teachers, I felt like the more developed a teacher was, the more nuanced my feedback would become, because at first you're just trying to, it's more broad, like have your voice do that, but you get more nuance. And so I kept telling people, like, if you can't fix this, we're not going to get into like the real good stuff that's going to make your class really elevated. So anyway, that's what's coming to mind.
Yes, I agree with all of this. And if Josh was here, he would definitely be talking about like all the tech ways and the AI things that you can implement. So thank you, Terry, for bringing that one up in lieu of Josh's presence. I was also just going to say a couple little things. Carol actually mostly mentioned this, but just to underline it, something that I think is incredibly important as a like mentor in any capacity, as a like if you're giving feedback on anything, is, like Carol said, get to agreement on what you're actually talking about, and then help them figure out how they're going to change the thing you want them to change. This is the biggest mistake I think that people make, is like, whether it is something big like how you cue, or it's something small like how are you going to remember to turn the lights off during shavasana, like whatever it is, what is stopping them from being like how you want them to be, and then what, like, let's work together on how you're actually going to get there. What do I want? And then of course, agree on what you are expecting to see the next time you come to their class. So just incredibly clear, incredibly helpful. Assume nothing about their understanding of what you're talking about. Assume they have no idea what that version of queuing looks like. Like, assume they don't know what a sun salutation is. Like, assume all of that and then go from there. So, just really, really specific feedback is so, so important. And then also, I like giving feedback is just something I'm really passionate about, and working with teachers is something I'm really passionate about. The more you can make it a conversation with them, the better. Like, figure out what is going on for them in those moments. Like, that is the stuff that's actually going to lead to transformation. The last thing I'll say too, which I think is sort of goes back to the original question that I think is really important to say, and this is what I told my client yesterday about it, is that I'm 100% sure, because I know her pretty well and I know how she deals with her staff, that the way she gave that feedback was perfectly fine and there was no problem with it. And what I did tell her was, high standards are always going to make your life a little bit harder in certain ways. It's the same. We all have a girlfriend who is always has a boyfriend because she has no standards, right? It's easy to find a boyfriend if you have no standards. It is easy to find yoga teachers if you have no standards. It's easy to keep yoga teachers if you have no standards. It is always going to make this part of business a little bit more labor intensive for you. And think about like all the biggest success stories in business. Like, Apple obsesses over every single detail of their iPhone. So the next time you're like, oh, am I being too nitpicky about the Shavasana having to be 4 minutes long rather than 2 minutes long? Hell no. Would Steve Jobs say that? No, he would not say that. It matters, and it is a little bit more labor intensive, but that's what success is. Like, that's literally like the main ingredient of success is having really high standards. So,
And that's your product.
yeah, that's
Your
the product.
product is a service. And like I chuckle when you say he was notorious for that. He was notorious because, and I will say, and I'm not, team knows, I have no Apple products. But yet when I pick up an Apple phone, it has they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Apple products are also aesthetically just gorgeous. So yes, there's that. The other thing too that it is interesting when you start doing this. We work with studios that this happens, and I'm working with one right now. Is particularly in longer term studios that they're just maybe getting to this point, getting pushback from teachers who don't like the feedback, and then it just really becomes like, okay, the conversation becomes, look, I hear where you're coming from. However, this is the new standard for the studio. And if this doesn't resonate with you, then perhaps it's time to part ways. Because if a more experience, and to your point about the client not being a new yoga teacher, to me, that's just sort of like is irrelevant because she owns the business and she knows what she wants. So if she gets pushback from the teachers about that, then it's just, they have, I'm already started, but my point being that if someone is very resistant, beyond just taking it to, and maybe how you deliver it, and like I know for me too blunt, and making it so that they can receive the feedback. But if some people are just not open to the feedback, then you have to ask yourself, is there a place for them on the team? Because if they're resisting the feedback and they're not going to change and everybody else is doing it, then that's where you get these little cancer cells growing, right? And that's going to bring the whole team down. And, I've seen this before. It's like the person goes and it's like a collective sigh of relief, unless you're trapped by some legal precedents. Yeah. Jen and I have a lot of code going back and forth here. But anyway, so my point being is that you have it defined, you're doing it. And if people, and not just your teachers, remember that culture of feedback, we've been talking a lot about teachers, but you should have feedback for your staff, for your support staff as well, like your front desk and your host, anybody else in the team. There needs to be a regular feedback with those folks as well. I'm having trouble, a client's having trouble with one of her front desk that the woman won't smile. And I'm like, my first thought was, well, why did you even hire her? And the second off is like, okay, if she's not smiling and she's like really grumpy, then this isn't a fit for her, right? So that's the other thing, I guess, is don't be held captive by the fear that someone might quit because of this. Because we've said it before, and I'll say it again, is running your business from a position of fear is never a good place to be in. Because if you're running from a position of fear, oftentimes the people will know it. And they're feeling like you're holding, then you feel like they're holding you're a hostage in your own business. And a good point to that is, if you don't want to go into your business when certain people are on staff, then that should tell you something. If you don't want to take a teacher's class because of certain things, that's a problem. Right? You may not necessarily like their class, but everybody, you don't have to like everything. But if there is a real problem, it's like, oh my God, I cannot stand that class. That's a problem.
That's
So
a mic drop moment, Terry.
Yeah.
Because that's very true. I wanted to kind of roll into something I was thinking about before. We talked about a little bit before we got on, but like this is also the point at which like co-creating a bit with, like Bridget was saying, like how do they even get there? I listened to a podcast recently that was saying like a good strong leader isn't just the captain of the ship, right? They are actually a master gardener. So you're creating the conditions where someone can grow and be their own beautiful selves. But like you do want to give them a vision, you do want to give them goals, you want to give them that target. And also like this, I think feedback is woven into all of this. Like, how do we get you there with your own vision, like their personality, etc.? How do we do that? Sometimes it's not going to be a fit, and it's going to be very obvious. If somebody's not Captain Ahab, I don't know what that is, Terry.
Moby Dick or Captain Queeg,
Oh,
right? They
no.
were like horrible captains. So like I love
Gotcha.
that you're saying about being the master gardener, because being captain of the ship doesn't necessarily mean you're just like mutiny. Think of Mutiny on the Bounty, right?
Right. Well, and I mean, oh, go ahead, Shannon.
I was just gonna say, as a sort of personality type that tends to be a captain, learning how to soften that has been a huge lesson for me as a business owner, and it's yielded incredible results. It's like I don't have to control the complete outcome. I'm going to give you the framework. And then as we're going through this journey of running this business and you interacting with my business, we're going to have feedback that's going to get us all back on track as we go. And it's a regular thing, it's a regular cadence. And I think that's where the gardening analogy is like so perfect. Because instead of being like, you do this because I said that's the way it needs to be done, which I mean, I'm thinking that. But at the same time, the results I'm going to get from that are going to be, I'm going to have pushback. I'm going to have, you know, just people pissed. And it's like, how do you nurture? I think that's a really hard part of being a business owner, is because we really are focused on the numbers, on the business and moving the business forward. But like, we're dealing with people. people can't, they're not robots. Like you have to be with them. That's part of being a leader. So I love that, Carol.
Yes, I love this analogy so much. And it actually goes to what me and this client were talking about yesterday, which is you don't want to have an environment, you don't want to have soil, if you will, in which a person who doesn't take feedback it can grow. You want it to be so clear from the beginning. That's why all of this stuff matters. That's why SOPs matter. It's why good training matters because you are saying from the beginning the kind of garden we are growing here is one in which there are boundaries, there are clear policies, it's professional, these are the expectations. And if that's just like the soup, or the sorry, I'm changing analogies. If that's just like if that's just like the soil that surrounds them from the beginning, you're gonna just have better hires because people see from the beginning, oh, she's like a professional. This, and I get this all the time from I almost all of my yoga teacher hires have said this to me, in the past 5 years or whatever, since I've been a better tender of my garden, is wow, I've never worked in a studio that had such clear, like, I've never worked in a studio that had a handbook or that had like a checklist or whatever. And it really helps to have that's what like you just created this garden and only stuff that fits in the garden that is fit for the garden grows.
Yeah, right now my garden has a lot of weeds, and that's literal because next week I'm going to be pulling weeds. But and I just made me think, and I made a note here because I have again this client that is took over a garden. Let's stay with this garden analogy. So took over a garden, meaning she bought an existing business, and the garden was a little bit in disrepair. Like everybody, you had wildflowers over here and cactus over here, and blueberries over here, and there was like no cohesiveness of the garden, and weeds were growing over here, and nobody knew what they were doing. You guys get the picture. So now she's cultivating the soil and doing all the things and streamlining it, deciding, well, we're not going to have cactus and blueberries in our garden. We're going to focus, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'm going too far with this. Anyway, as she's doing this, and this is wont to happen, she gets pushback. And she gets lots of pushback. Explain, still gets pushback. So finally, we talked about this, and I gave her, I came up, I didn't even chat this. I came up with this myself. I was so surprised. Is a way to, and here's like, again, this is a pro tip, a way to approach it. And basically it's like, hey, Carol, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I hear where you're coming from with that. I can see, your situation with that, whatever it is, basically repeating them back. It's just like in sales, we talk about people want to be heard. And I apologize that I did not explain things clearly enough for you. However, can you trust me that this is important? And can I trust you, or can I count on you to get this done this way? And perhaps then the understanding will come. Until you can see, or until we explain it better or whatever. I forgot how I worded it, but actually it was like, basically, can I count on you to support this, knowing that I was thought behind it? And again, my bad for not explaining it thoroughly to you. Can I count on you to do it this way? Because basically that is just like full stop. If they still push back, or if they say, basically what you're asking them in a veiled way is, do you trust me to know what I'm doing? And if they basically say, well, no, I don't want to do, then there's your answer, right? It's like, can I count on you to do it this way, knowing that it's been thought through and this is what the process is going to be? Basically, it's like, do as I say, but it's a nicer way of saying it. It really is. It's like, yeah. So what, I don't know. That was just, I thought it was,
I think I just wanted to relate back to, I love that, Terry. And I just wanted to relate back to what Bridget had said about the feedback that you're getting from your newer hires of this, like, oh my gosh, this is so organized and I understand the expectations and like how freeing that is for them. Do you know what I mean? Like they actually feel supported and understand how to operate in the space. I mean, it's like a first visit flow for your onboarding. It's just, it's so important. And going back to the garden analogy, when you plant a garden, like you're organized about it. You dig the thing, you plant the seeds, you water the seeds, they're in a row. Like you don't just randomly, it's not random. And I think that structure is actually, like I said, it's just very comforting for people to know that you're holding that structure for them and you're holding them to it as well. And you see the weeds faster. Yeah, good point, Carol. Yeah,
You can
totally.
make, I think you can make quicker decisions on whether this person fits or not because you have everything situated there and like, oh, that's not working. I need to change that. I'm pulling that weed. Wow,
yeah, the whole weed analogy. I love it.
it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
you do see the weeds sooner and you can take action quicker.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it just goes to like, you are running a business. You do need to, I mean, hey, if you're listening, it's like, I don't want to do any of this, that's fine. That's your choice as a business. If you want people just come in, take class, yoga teachers do whatever they want, totally, totally fine if that's what you want to do. However, if you're listening to this and you're like, you're struggling and you're not paying yourself and you're stressed out and some of this is resonating with you, then it's like, okay, where do I start? And start small. Pick one thing.
That's
And
actually come up a lot
uh,
for me
yeah,
recently. It's like
yeah,
they're looking at the big picture and it's like I don't even know where to
just start.
start.
Yeah,
And I'm like, pick one, make a list. Let's do the easiest one. I went through this with the client yesterday. I'm like, what do you already have as far as an SOP for this? The context is she's hired a manager and wants her to do all of these things. And it feels so daunting. So we said, okay, here's your immediate list. What can you do today? Like, is there a video you can make that we can turn into an SOP? Yep, we got 4 things and they're going to be really simple and they're going to take a lot of things off of her plate right away. I'm like, okay, that's your goal this week. Get her up to speed on these 4 things. Next week, we'll look at the list and see what we can tackle then. It's a little at a time.
yeah. And here, pro tip for that too. I just had this with a client I was on before this call, getting to that point where he's basically in every seat still and wants to offload some of the managerial or the tasky things. Again, pro tip. I told him for the next 2 weeks, it's going to be pain, but write down everything you do. You do a voice note, do a note on your whatever phone you have, put it in a doc, whatever. And then at the end of the time, this again, AI, take it, upload it to chat or whatever one you're using and say, organize this. Organize this by type. Right. And then you're going to have a list of all those tasks you do organized into groups of things. Right. And they're like, okay, I'm going to have someone do in this group all of this stuff. What do I need to do that? Boom, to your point, Carol. Yeah.
And if you're recording how much time you're spending on the thing, like it could be really illuminating to be like, I didn't realize I spent that much time. So you could have AI also tell you like, where am I spending
And
most of my time? And if I took that one thing off my plate, boy, I'd have a lot more time every week.
yeah,
So yeah, that's a
that
great call
that's
out.
a yeah, that's a good one too. Is this a $25 and $20 an hour task. And again, depending on where you are in the world, in the country, what you would pay someone to do something like this. But is it a $25 an hour task, or is it something that and if you're doing a lot of $25 tasks, then you're spending your time in the wrong place. It's like, would you pay someone, here's the other thought, would you pay someone $50 an hour to do this for you? Like I mentioned, my lead teacher, the one that was doing the feedback. So I kind of didn't, I had an idea of how much time I spent doing it. I wasn't quite as organized that back then, but I knew it was about, on average per week. And so I told her that. I said, sometimes it's going to be more, sometimes it's going to be less. And as it was based on this many hours, I was thinking of paying this much a month. I just did like a flat fee she said, yeah, that seems reasonable to me. She said, yeah, that's fair based on what you're asking me to do. I said, track your hours for the next couple of months. And that, because I want to make sure, blah, blah, blah. So she came back to me after a couple, I said, Terry, it's actually really not taking me as long as you thought it was going to take. So if you want to reduce, and I said, no. I said, no. In fact, I probably would have paid her based on how much easier my life got. I would have paid her more. But she was like, I said, no, I'm happy with this. Thank you so much. Things are so much better. So that was the other thing, is that I'm like, no, I'll pay you this because it is worth it to me not to have it on my plate. Yeah. So anyway. Well,
Scrape your plate, tend your garden. What else? What else we got?
yeah,
What did I said something about soup? I don't know what we're
Eat
going
your
there.
soup.
Oh,
Warm
tend
your
your
soup up.
garden. Okay, anybody a Bridgerton fan?
Sorry,
No.
Terry.
Yeah.
I'm
Seen
sorry.
it, but I don't know how it
One of
relates.
these days, you're gonna find a fellow fan in
No.
spirit.
There's a
You're gonna name something and we're all gonna go,
No,
yes.
I know. There's a whole thing in Bridgerton where Violet is talking about her garden is blooming and she needs to have her garden tended.
uh,
Is that
Oh,
a
oh,
euphemism?
is
Is
it
it
a
a euphemism?
euphemism?
Okay.
Oh
kind
my
of like
God.
the garden that we're talking about for a yoga studio. Her garden was blooming and it needed to
Whew,
be tended. It was so great.
my
I've
God.
heard that that's a very racy show, or
Oh my
clearly
God.
I,
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. It's a
Okay.
very
Get
racy
into
show. It's also, I love how they take modern music. Like there's an episode that they're using Wrecking Ball. That's what's Miley Cyrus,
Miley Cyrus.
Miley.
Miley Cyrus. They use Wrecking, but they put it in, they take modern music, but then they orchestrate it to the Regency era,
cool.
which is the early 1800s in England. So
Yeah.
it's mixed in the era, the style, the music style of the era, but yet it's modern music. And the one with the wrecking ball, it was so perfect for the scene. It was absolutely so perfect for the scene. Anyway, you know me, I always got to go off on random tangents. So
Kind of love it.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Is it a wrap, people?
I think it's a
All right, that is a wrap on this week's Weekly Roundup. Tune in every Friday and make sure you subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you are listening from. We'll see you next week. Bye.